Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. Today's September 10, 2024. Want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. Please subscribe. Also want to thank Philip Perkins for introducing us to today's guest, John Bischoff. Is that right, Bischoff?
Bischoff, you got it.
Where in the heck you calling in from, John?
Berkeley, California.
How cool is that? First question is, what is the best thing for a human being?
The best thing to be engaged and as deeply as possible connected to an activity that has meaning to them.
Yeah, very good. What's your favorite form of information, how it comes into you?
I like it's kind of funny. I do electronics all the, and so forth. And I'm just like everybody. I use current devices to get my information, but I prefer to like listen to music on fixed media, on CDs, and I prefer to read physical books. But I'm trying to change a little bit.
Yeah.
But that's what I prefer.
Yeah. And just to go off on books for a second, did you become a reader, one, because your parents told you to, two, they did it as an example, or three, on your own?
Really, well, two and three. I was very lucky because my uncle, my dad's brother, was very much into literature, and I have a story about that. He was like a kid, the eternal kid, very enthusiastic, and whatever he was enthusiastic about, he would tell us about. Not really expecting. It wasn't like he was trying to pressure us into getting into it. He just was enthusiastic. So I remember one time when I was about 9 years old, he came over on a Sunday and sat in the living room and tried to read us the beginning of Huckleberry Finn. And it drove my mom nuts because it's so funny right from the very beginning. My uncle kept stopping and laughing hysterically. He couldn't stop laughing, so he couldn't really read it. My mom just said, "Bert," which is what his name was, "Bert, just read it. Just read it." I mean, it was like a comedy routine. But the thing I got was that he thought Huck Finn was one of the greatest things he ever read. And well, he's right,
It's right.
He like imparted his love of it. And so I thought, man, if this guy, and he did that a number of times, and I thought, if this guy's that into it, there's probably something there. So I began reading at a pretty early age, and it's been a lifetime of it means a lot to me, just all the reading I've done, and that engagement has really meant a lot to me, and I owe it to my uncle, really.
It's beautiful. So John, why do you think humans collect or gather information?
There's so many different answers to that. I think for survival, to find out how to survive, certainly to learn, which is very, very closely related. I would say to learn mostly.
Yeah.
Maybe to be connected to each other, stay connected, which is also important. I would say those three things.
Really good. Do you think this need or want to collect information is more innate or more invented?
I think it's both. I think it became no one knows the answer to that, I don't think, but I think it became a necessity, and then it sort of fed itself. The benefits and the engagement with it kind of fed itself. So it's kind of invented too.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of these early philosophical questions, is it more this or more that? It's, of course, it's both. I mean, a lot of times it's both, and it depends, but that's what I'm after. Just suss it out, however, because the next one is like that. Do thoughts create emotions?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I feel they do.
Yeah.
Those are so intermixed to me. I don't know how you'd separate them.
Yeah. Fill in the blank. I don't know what I think until I
do it.
Do it. Yeah. See, McLuhan says, I don't know what I think until I say it. Joan Didion says, I don't know what I think until I write it. But
Right.
You would be surprised. I've been interviewing for 40 years, 1,000 people. Most people say, experience it, do it. Some sort of reality kind of,
Right.
not another invention, because people don't know spoken word and pens are invented.
Right. Right.
But is the direct experience what you're calling about doing, is that invented? No. I mean, but that's what we are, right? We are being present, I guess. I don't know.
Right.
Okay, so can humans think without language?
Boy, that's the big question. I would tend to say no, but it's the scene I kind of grew up in it around Mills in the 70s. Um, Language could also be seen as an oppressor,
Yeah,
and maybe that or a culture can certainly seem like an oppressor.
yeah,
So it's yeah, it's a hard one. I don't know the answer. I think you have to be careful.
yeah,
How can you be careful? I think you need language, but
yeah. Because we're going to get into music, John, but hearing you interviewed on Casa Bernice was really
oh,
good because
oh, thanks.
it's like, how can you ever talk about the kind of music you create? That's like ridiculous almost. But the words you use are all poetic. Triggers, grunge, textures. It was all like it was great words. And you kept reminding me of Igor Stravinsky giving lectures. Music
Oh,
means nothing.
yeah,
I mean, isn't it sort of ridiculous to talk about music? No, it's good. But
yeah,
in the long run, isn't music it's sort of like dreams? They're just there to be experienced as that
yeah.
experience.
That's right.
You know,
Yeah, words don't replace it. Of course. Yeah, that's right.
right. But this is Chomsky. He says language is not just words. It's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. What do
Yeah,
you
that
yeah, what do
sounds
you
right.
Yeah, what do you do when language doesn't work? When language breaks down, what do you do?
Well, you do you do music. I I mean, you try other modes, I guess,
Yeah,
and music certainly is one of them. People communicate through music, but I couldn't really I certainly could not describe in words the connections I feel with composers' music that I find the most meaningful. I don't even I just don't know where to begin, and I don't even know what it is.
yeah,
Just know that I'm feeling it. That so anyway, I mean, I think almost everybody would say that. It's kind of a commonplace to say that you feel music, you don't think it.
yeah,
But you think it too, but it's um so I don't know, maybe what I ended up saying was pretty trite, but it feels like the as an example, there's a piece just one example of many. There's the final movement of Charles Ives' first piano sonata that I've listened to for almost 50 years. And I first got very deeply into it, um, learning about Ives through James Tenney, my teacher at Cal Arts in 1970. And and so but that, I mean, I'm a big fan of Ives' music, but that particular movement, I mean, just as an example, I can listen to that. I've listened to it probably over 100 times, and I can't really. It just has this power. It's just so amazing to me, but I don't know how it's doing it. I don't really
yeah,
know how Ives came up with it, how he even thought of doing. It's kind of extreme in a certain way musically, but I just it just it keeps me listening because I think this
yeah,
I can't get to the end of this thing.
yeah.
It's so has so much depth and power for me, but and meaning.
Oh, it's
So I guess
beautiful.
that's feeling. That's almost pure feeling, even though there's probably some kind of yeah. I'm not talking about what he did technically. I'm really talking
Yeah.
about the power of the music as I listen to it.
But John, you anticipated the next question perfectly. You got ESP, but I have to interject these couple things because Auden the poet said the mystery of art is that we don't know if it activates or pacifies us. You know, so it's almost like that music by Ives is, which one is it doing? Is it, you like go, I'm not trying to figure out how he did it. In fact, that's amazing. Another great Berkeley person, um, filmmaker. I said, how did Chris Marker Sans Soleil influence you? and it definitely did. And he goes, I tried to imagine how he made it. He didn't go, I read all the books that explain how he made it. It made him try to imagine. So it's like you're
Yeah.
trying to imagine, and
Yeah.
that's Don Preston, the great keyboardist, played with Zappa and everybody. He said, did Apocalypse Now soundtrack. He did. I says, when I asked him all these questions, he says, yeah, music don't think. And I'm like, good luck. You got this Rolodex in your head of licks and stuff and
Yeah.
structures and stuff. How do you not think? But there is that magic, is how you let go of that
Yeah. Right.
and dive in, but you still have something, you know, to like.
Yeah, that's a good, really good musical example, like kind of the jazz certainly example of how there's all this technical work ahead of time and kind of cataloging and
Yeah,
practice and pattern. But then when you play, if it's you have to get beyond that, and or it
yeah,
really doesn't have any magic. But people do.
yeah.
Yeah, they don't think it just comes out in these new ways every time. It's never the same. So
But
I-
it's also, well, we'll get into that also. Okay, here's the next question that you anticipated. Your observations of humans in general, are we more thinking beings or more feeling beings?
probably more feeling, I would say.
Yeah,
If you're gonna give it, I don't know.
yeah,
Yeah, and it would be hard.
yeah.
Let's
Because John, most people go, I think we're more feeling beings.
that's right, there you go. The
There you go.
conundrum.
But Bridget Bardot says, when I make love, I don't think. And I'm like, good luck. How do you turn your brain off? Like when they go, okay, meditate, think about not thinking. Or there's a bumper sticker on a car on
Right.
my street and it says, don't believe everything you think. And I'm like, well, you could say, don't believe everything you feel,
That's right. You
you
could.
know?
You could.
But we invented the word thinking and feeling. So then we think we can separate them.
Yeah, that's right.
They're probably so connected. So here's two questions from Alan Turing, 1950s. One, is thinking a function of the soul?
Right. Oh God. Yeah. Yeah, I guess I don't know the answer to that. Uh, I think it is, yeah, but
Yeah, that's good. And
I think it is. I
yeah,
should just say it is. I feel it is.
I feel, this is the second Turing question. Can machines think?
Right. I don't think so, even
Yeah,
though let's just say I think I feel it's a different I feel uh it's a different situation.
yeah,
Machines and people are different. There's a lot of there can be a lot of overlap. Of course, in this day and age, it can become that issue can become very confusing. But I don't think we're anywhere close to knowing how humans think. And so
yeah,
therefore, and I don't think we could
yeah.
make the compare the equal comparison there with machines. And we're just a long way from that. I don't even though we're advancing quickly, I think we're a long way, and I don't even know if it'll ever really happen. So anyway, that's a good question.
Yeah.
We're babies when it comes to that stuff. We're not like, oh, we're like right, it's just around the corner. I think we're just really babies
Oh
in
yeah,
understanding the way humans think. So
yeah. I heard on the radio they said, "Hey, AI is just in its early stage, and it's our job to raise it well." So
yeah,
you know,
right. We better do it right, or we're gonna be in big trouble.
but you know, me being in the experimental film world, you being in experimental electronic computer music, both of them to the normal consumer would kind of say, that's random shit, dude.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? I'm not
yeah,
saying, me and you can form an aesthetic and go, oh, I like that piece or that piece confused, or like the Ives piece.
yeah,
Because but and I thought of this years ago. I started asking all the experimental film teachers, I goes, so have your students made computer generated films yet? And could you tell the difference?
Yeah,
And then,
right.
oh yeah, some of them dabbled. And then I'm curious, just before we even get into your in music and computers, have you heard any AI made or computer made music, even probably that started years ago, that was sort of like, oh, that was interesting. It could have been made by a human, or it fooled me.
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know if I ever felt fooled, but I mean,
Yeah,
it could have been.
yeah,
Certainly found things to be very interesting and things made by a computer that were, yeah, very interesting, very, yeah. But I don't know. The question kind of begs, the kind of situation where it would be some kind of test situation where the only thing involved was a computer and it was trying to make music that um, made you believe it was composed by a human, and that most of the time it's more of a hybrid situation. The computer's
it's a
involved in some
hybrid.
way, but so it's not as clear cut. So it'd be hard. It would be a hard test to. I don't know if I've ever been tested exactly the way you're talking about. I think.
But that's your key word is hybrid. It's always hybrid because we invented the
Right.
AI, so it's always hybrid.
That's
But
right.
that's like right down the street beyond Baroque. I don't know if you've ever played there, but
I did. Yeah, years ago.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Carl Stone played there once this piece, I don't know, 20 or 40 minutes. And then at the end, and it was just slowed down Michael Jackson song. And then at the
Oh,
very end, you could go, oh, that's the
oh yeah.
source. Like it
Right.
was so
Yeah,
very
yeah,
that
yeah,
it was like, so do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
meaning gives me happiness, so I probably
Yeah.
would say meaning because that's where my happiness lies.
Yeah. Because I got it from Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. He says, happiness tends to not last, meaning tends to last.
Yeah, I'm sympathetic to that
Yeah.
viewpoint. Hey,
Does
so I have a little question, brief question for you about the experimental film world. Do you know Phil McKenna's work? We're going way back. He was a Bay Area filmmaker, but he was showing his films in the mid '70s at the Ann Arbor Film Festival. Maybe that's I don't know how old you are, but maybe that's before you.
I'm 71. But yeah, his first name is Phil, Phil.
PHIL McKenna, MAKANNA.
I
He kind
don't
of
know.
stopped making films. He was very critical, important filmmaker, experimental filmmaker, and video artist in the Bay Area. But latter '70s, he kind of got off into doing photography. So that's maybe that for that reason you wouldn't know him.
I would love to look into him. Look at I am always intrigued, just like you find a new computer electronic musician, like how did I not know about that person? It's
Yeah,
amazing. In the
yeah,
New York Times obits is the most amazing because these
yeah.
people
That's right. You can
they
always find.
finally get their do right, and it's like, yeah, you die and you get a third of a page in the New
Yeah,
York Times.
right.
Why didn't you support me at all of my whole career when I was alive?
Yeah, that's right. No kidding.
But at
That's right.
least that's the amazing thing to me about the New York Times. At least they do that.
Yeah, that's right.
Come on. I mean, it could
Yeah,
just go off, but I'm amazed when I read about these people and I go, how did I not know about this one?
yeah, right. Yeah.
So, does the brain more detect consciousness or create it? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're more so detecting it or more so creating it?
Boy, that's a tough one. I don't know where I fall on that. It just seems like it's both, but
Yeah.
it's because we don't really know. What you're really saying is how much intelligence is coming from the outside and how much is conjured from the inside.
Yeah.
Yeah, God, I mean, it's probably both, yeah, but I don't know. Yeah, I think it'd be really hard to draw a division there.
But it's good, John, because see, what I'm after too is it's me and you versus the wording on the question.
Yeah,
So you change, and I welcome this to flesh out what the words I lay out are. you kind of change consciousness into intelligence, because is consciousness something inside or outside? In fact, I'll tangent for a second. The New Yorker had an article, and I'll ask you the question. They said, does the kid inside the mother's womb dream, or are dreams needed? You have to have experience to have dreams. So you can't have dreams until you're outside the womb, or can you be dreaming inside the womb? Which
I
one do
think
you?
you're dreaming inside the womb, because I think you're experiencing whatever level you can. You're experiencing what it's like in there,
Yeah,
and you're probably dreaming. I would
yeah.
think.
No, that's funny, 'cause that's what most people say. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
That's a great one. I don't know. They're equally as fast. I
Yeah.
don't know the answer. That's pretty good. I don't know
Audrey,
how it could be faster than the speed of light. I thought speed of light is the fastest, but of course we're not sure now. But,
yeah. Well, it's funny too, because we thought up the speed of light. So before we thought up speed of light, speed of thought had to be or yeah, I don't know about faster. It's sort of, again, funny. It's not, faster is probably not the right word, but
yeah.
Audre Lorde, the poet, said you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. Yvonne Rainer said you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest?
Well, the most contemporary tool we have, which is the computer. So I'm interested in dismantling the computer in some way.
Yeah,
Um, I mean, there's so many ways for me to talk about this. I would just say dismantling it musically, so that you feel that you have some sense, even if it's imaginary, that the computer is working really hard to do the music it's doing, and it's
yeah,
doing it in its own way. It's not trying to be something else. It's kind of a contrary, I think, contrary take to the general way people think of computers now. The culture thinks of the computer. The culture thinks of the computer as being infinitely variable, infinitely capable, and can be anything. Can be turned. Can pretend to be anything. I I mean, I don't quite believe that, but I also think it's not helpful to look at it that way. I like to think of it as like, let's challenge the computer to face off with me and get down into my world, which is a physical world, which is has all sorts of imperfection in it. I'm not interested in perfection in the computer realm. I
yeah,
want imperfection. I want to force it to be imperfect. Anyway, it's just a different. I want to hear that in the music. I want to hear awkwardness in the music. I want to
yeah,
hear all these human, things. I want it to be fallible, not infallible. But
yeah,
people just think, why would you why would you want that? We're
yeah.
They're glad the computer's here because it could be infallible. No, that does not interest me. But anyway, it's a big
But
subject. But
that shows your artistic, your integrity, and I love that. I heard you say something like about that, because that's
I'm
like,
always saying that. I'm always giving
yeah,
that line
but
somehow.
but it's like glitch art. I had the king of glitch art, even Evan Meany, and he teaches it. It's like, no, we're looking for the glitches and
Yeah,
the
that's right.
mistakes, but it's not that you don't know the other. In fact, my other friend Clinton Ignatoff taught me, studying McLuhan, is that he said, nobody knows how to fix their computer or their cell phone. We grew up knowing how to fix our
Yeah,
cars,
yeah,
kind of. But we just are so controlled, like, okay, planned obsolescence, just go buy a new one,
yeah, that's right. Guy,
And
the composer Gordon Mumo always, kind of rails about that. I don't know if you know his work from, he was in the Sonic Arts Union.
oh yeah, yeah, no, I've heard him, yeah.
Yeah, he would just he said something the same, like, what, at a concert, if something went wrong, you'd be able to just pull out your soldering iron and fix it. You can't do that with a computer.
And also, I have to interject, having worked for Frank Zappa for 10 years, when he got the synclavier, he could play a trumpet run better than a human could play it. And
Yeah.
he says, man, if I would have had this, I would have never gone on the road. And we were like, no, you had to be a musician working on the road to get to the point where
It's
you
good you
could,
said it's good you said that to him. Yeah.
yeah, but so you could say that. Oh, wait, I mean, I didn't, I might not have said exactly because he came from all the guy. I mean, he came out of your same world,
Yeah.
Cage, and,
Yeah. Yeah.
he heard all that. I mean, you watch him on YouTube doing dead air. he just
Yeah.
he just stares at the camera for 5 minutes. He says, this is
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
old song we used to do in the Mothers, dead air.
Yeah. No, he was totally hip to all that stuff for
Yeah,
sure.
but it is funny because then a kid who learned one of his synclavier pieces got the audition because he played a song that Frank had a computer play. And he says,
Oh.
"You're a human and you played that? Okay, you're hired."
Oh god, yeah. It's pretty good.
What new toy do you suggest?
As far as I don't go through if you're thinking of electronic toys, of course, that's what comes to mind. I don't go through them quickly. I I'm not the kind of electronic musician that is constantly getting new things and trying them. I I get something, I try to make it work in a way that's interesting to me, and if I get some interesting things out of it, then I'll use it for 4 years or something,
Yeah,
I kinda limit my tools. To me, it's partly because of my capabilities and my, idiosyncrasies,
yeah,
and even limitations, but it's also to me, I feel like it takes me a while to get down, with any given thing, down deep enough to get something interesting, so changing
yeah,
all the time would be a disaster for me, but some
yeah,
people I have colleagues that get things all the time, and they're really quick at, like, adapting their music to them and incorporating them in a good way, and so it's not a that's a very personal decision, I would say.
yeah.
I kinda got off track from your question, I think, but
No, no, you answered it well. What do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
everything. Are you kidding, man? I worry. I'm 74. I worry. I've been reflecting recently about how I didn't used to worry hardly at all.
Yeah,
Man, I worry a lot. It's mainly though. I think. Well, mainly there's a big chunk of it that's the state of the American political craziness, and
yeah,
I worry about that a lot. I try not to worry, but it's just been really a drag. But of course, then I mean beyond that. Gee, um, I you know, I worry about death. I mean, how else are you gonna put it? It's like
yeah,
when you're younger, you don't really think about it, but as you're on the, my friend Tim Perkins said, we're in sudden death overtime."
yeah,
Not to get into a morbid subject, but, it's sorta like, well, you know, anyway, I don't know if that's worry. There might be some kinda deep anxiety that's kinda hidden around down there. But anyway, uh, so I don't know if I've answered your question.
no, you did fine, and in fact, it's a good follow-up for a question I've been asking. Can you forget to die?
I don't think so. God, might be nice, but
Yeah.
where'd you come up with that one? That's pretty
Well,
good.
it's funny because, John, most people where people don't know whether I'm asking it, literally or metaphorically.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Because then they go, "What do you mean, can I forget that I'm going to die?" But
right.
anyways, here we go. McLuhan learned from Ezra Pound, the artist, and that artists are the antenna of the race. And I mean by artists, musicians, painters, poets, they're broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions so we might learn how to cope with what we don't like about our inventions. So I asked you the question Marshall probed his whole career. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
Yeah, that's a good I believe that artists are doing, what Pound said, right? And
Yeah,
I think, yeah, why do we ignore that? It's to it means it involves some work, and
yeah,
I think, and so that's the thing. I mean, it's the same. you could say the same, question. You could sort of phrase it in terms of a more limited thing of like with my music students. It's well, what would I say? That any kind of worthwhile art often, not always, but often takes repeated exposure to kind of get the hang of, and that's a certain kind of work. It's learning, a certain kind of learning, and a certain kind of work. Well, not everybody feels very open to doing that process, and I think it's a great loss to not do that. But I think that sort of pertains to the question you're asking is like, well,
Yeah.
they're not paying attention to what the artists are saying because it involves some work on their part, and they don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I not it's not a moral thing. It's just like it's just a practical thing. It's like, to get the hang of some things, you gotta keep at them.
Yeah.
And if you don't, you never, it's like then you stay at this kind of really um, low level where you don't get that. So anyway, that's what I would say. I'm always
Yeah.
telling my students that, or I did when I was teaching, and I don't know if they really, I don't know if they really believe me, to tell you the truth.
Yeah. No, your words repeated exposure reminded me of some great documentarian, Pennebaker, said, never hit the fast forward button on your footage when you're watching your film, because people like go, oh, I shot 40 hours. Oh, I know this 10-minute chunk is perfect. And then they don't watch the rest of the reel or
Oh
something.
yeah,
And you have to watch every second, paying attention, repeated exposure to find the nuance and subtleties.
I
And
think that's right. Yeah, I
that
agree with that.
takes work.
Yeah,
That takes work, you know.
yeah, persistence and
Yeah.
attention and yeah, everything. Yeah, right.
Do artists have moral obligation?
I think they do. Not to make anything that hurts anybody,
Yeah.
I guess. I mean, that's pretty broad, but and the broader, deeper maybe issue is like, well, yeah, are you making something that's actually contributing something to the conversation, that's contributing meaning to the cultural conversation? And it's hard it's hard for an artist to answer that for themselves. They can only say, yeah, they're trying, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a
Are you
moral act. Yeah.
yeah. Are you more afraid of old ideas or more afraid of new ideas?
I I don't know if I'm afraid of either of them. I'm not really afraid. It doesn't mean because I'm used to kind of just making some assessment of them and then deciding either to pay
Yeah.
attention or not. And then and even when I decide not to pay attention, I have to, like I've said, have to remember, I should come back around and see if this thing I decided not to pay attention to is more interesting than I thought. Just be careful not to shortchange myself that way.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's fear in it.
Yeah. It's
You
good.
can't know everything. You can't get everything. I mean,
Yeah.
so it's not like I'm afraid, God, I'm gonna miss something that's gonna change my life. I don't think of it that way.
Yeah. Can you conjure up your earliest memory ever or one of them?
One of them would be, let's see, that I grew up on 6th Avenue in San Francisco, and on a block that was near the Presidio wall, and I only lived there till I was 4, so I have very few memories of that time. But I have this very vague memory of someone telling me, "Don't go over that wall into the Presidio." Probably my mom for good reason, but I was so young. I don't think I'd be trying to go anywhere very far. But the other thing that's so memorable about it is that I right near the next to the Presidio wall, a few doors down, we were like maybe three houses down from the wall. There was the daughter of Boris Karloff lived there. And so and somehow, even at that young age, someone told me that, and told me who Boris Karloff was and all about Frankenstein. So this fear about not going over the wall was also, I thought, well, yeah, Frankenstein or someone related to Frankenstein lives there. That's like a really early memory, kind of vague, kind of fear thing.
Is that's really a wild flip, John. You went from you don't have fear, then you have the fear from the Frankenstein. Now the best is the follow up is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
Oh, it's more a blessing, I'd
Yeah,
say.
yeah. Tell me someone within your immediate family, then outside your immediate family, just briefly, who had an impact on you, kind of like a role model. And what specifically was that impact?
Well, of course, for me, I'd have to say my father because he was a painter,
Yeah.
and he and with the so for him, the impact would be, um, I think he taught me this thing about learning, about continual learning and paying attention. But he didn't. I don't remember him ever saying it. It just was. I got it through osmosis. You
Yeah.
know that if you pay attention and you work in some form. As him was painting, but I mean, you work on making things and you pay attention. If you do that continually, then great things can happen. That I sort of got that message again, just somehow through osmosis. Outside the family, God, I've had some great teachers. It'd be hard to pick one. James Tenney was like a great teacher.
Well, what did you get mainly from James? Because he's huge in the experimental film world too, because of his
Oh, Stan
work.
Brackett. Yeah.
No, because
Oh,
James's work with his wife Carol,
oh yeah, right. That, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Caroline Schleman. Yeah,
Yeah, right, yeah.
yeah. But I mean, anyways, he was huge. I mean, what'd you mainly get from James? Would you say?
So much. He's so smart, so articulate, and probably the main thing would be, um, when he looked at my compositions, he really tried to figure out what the hell I was trying to do. He didn't try to
Wow.
make me do what he was interested in. He just said, and so what he said was like really valuable. And the best teachers, I would say Robert Ashley also did that.
Oh my God, you worked with
So
Robert Ashley.
yeah,
Amazing.
so they both did that. They were very different, but they were the same in that way. They tried to speak to what was really going on with me and the work. So
Well,
um,
that's funny, John, because someone once told me in someone once told me that a big shot art teacher at an artist at Cal Arts didn't teach his students well because they were going to potentially take his gallery space. And so he's like, I'm gonna now that sounds really
I mean, like they're potential competitors. You mean?
yeah, yeah, and that's what I mean. It's like there's a fine line because you said both James and Robert are looking at your pieces like, how did you do this? Like, why didn't I come up with this? It could be like, well,
Oh,
I'm learning from my students, so
yeah,
it's a copacetic, it's
yeah,
cyclical,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
No, well, that's true, and I think, well, I think they probably did learn from me in some way through the
yeah,
process, but not to steal anything, just to,
right, right,
yeah, exchange was happening. Absolutely, yeah, yeah.
yeah. Did your parents raise you a particular religion?
My dad was not religious. My mom was a Christian Scientist, and
Yeah,
so that was a I sort of followed Christian Science until I went away to college, and then I stopped following it pretty much within the first week.
yeah.
It's pretty hilarious. Maybe that's common with most people. I
It
was on
is.
some
It's
kind of autopilot, and then once I got away from home, the autopilot was gone. So
yeah. No, it's very similar to most people I ask. Do you pray?
no,
And
I
if
stopped
God,
praying. That's when I stopped praying.
yeah, if God does exist, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
God, wow. Hey, yay, yay. Keep going or something like that,
Yeah.
Keep
No, I
doing what
like
you're
the first part was too. Ay, ay, ay.
doing. Uh,
Um, do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
I think evil people do exist, and yeah, how they come about, I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know if it, I mean, it's just a part of the human nature that there's such greatness and such depth and compassion, and then there's also such potential for evil. That's a I don't know that answer. Where it comes from.
Well,
I don't know. Go
people
ahead.
say that, John. People say that, John. Often they go, everyone's potential has potential to be evil, but maybe it's something, culturally or trauma that's caused them. But really, the hidden question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I'll set it up. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from The Mob and the Samurai: keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So it's a lot of prompts. The basic question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
Well, I think there's some truth to that. Yeah. Um, yeah. God, that's such a tough question. I,
But
you know,
say one of your students came up to you and were having trouble being bullied, or they were like, I have an enemy, someone's bullying me. What would you say to them?
well, I just try to get help for that. I try to be very
Yeah.
compassionate
Yeah.
for and try to get help. But I don't know if I would try to get some kind of professional help. I wouldn't feel necessarily that I would be the one to
Yeah.
spearhead that effort, to tell you the truth. I mean,
Yeah, no, that's fine. Because Nassim Taleb said games were created to give non-heroes the illusion of winning. In real life, we don't know who wins or loses, but we can tell who a hero is. Gregory Bateson says, when the criminal gets caught, does he go, whoa, my criminal skills weren't up to snuff that day? Or does he go, oh, I did something morally and socially wrong?
yeah.
So again, it's a lot of prompts. You can go wherever you want, but the basic question is, does punishment work?
God, I certainly not always. I mean,
Yeah,
I think I mean, the answer might be in the Bateson, if punishment leads to the kind of self-reflection that that was one answer that Bateson mentioned, then it
yeah,
could. But if it's just, yeah, I just, my evil skills weren't up to it. Well, then
yeah.
maybe punishment's not going to do a thing. I, I don't know. Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah, I asked this kid once, he's spent 20 years out of 30 years in jail. I says, well, is jail just HBO, cell phones, and the drug of your choice? And he goes, yeah, pretty much. And I was like, oh, no.
Wow. God, yeah. I'm sure there's some truth to that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin about 100 years ago. He basically checked out. He said, this is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree? Years later, Faulkner said sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism. Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
Yeah. Well, it's fun to make this stuff up, I think.
Yeah.
That's one thing. People seem compelled to do it. I mean, it would be nice if they also paid greater attention to everyday life as well.
Yeah.
Instead of having headphones on all the time. Drives me nuts. Walking around, you say hi to people going by and they've got earbuds in and it's just like, God, can't you like experience just what's happening out here without, you know, being in this like your little bubble? I don't know. Of course they can do whatever they want. It's their choice,
But no, I feel the same way, John. When people in my neighborhood are walking their pets or their kids and they're talking on their cell phone, it's like, wait, are you going to experience a nice neighborhood walk with me, or are you going to do your business?
Yeah,
You know,
I know. That's true. I
like
feel the same way.
the pet and the kid look back and go, what the fuck, man? Can't you just chill out for a
Chill
second?
out. That's right. That's right. Oh, good.
Well,
That's a
John,
pretty good
walk us
story.
through just, briefly like the tipping points for your callings. So, I mean, you're going along in high school or college. Are you studying music and you're like hearing music around the house and go, I can do that? And then where's the tipping point where you go, well, I can do that with a computer? And then the tipping point to be an educator. So the three main callings, where's those tipping points?
Well, the music connection was very early for me, and it was partly the environment because my dad also in addition to painting, he played improvised jazz piano and played trumpet, and then his brother, my uncle, the literature hound, he also played kind of a stride piano. So I was hearing that music, and so that was an opportunity to get into it early. The other thing I won't go into too deeply, but I was in a kind of I was the youngest of four, and I had kind of a pretty heavy sibling rivalry with my brother that was just a year and a half older, and he was my mom's favorite. So without going into too much detail, I kind of felt like from a very early age, felt like there wasn't a place for me. I was on the losing end of a
Yeah.
triangle, and though I had a lot of support from my older brother and sister who were like 8 and 10 years older. So it was so the reason I bring that up is because I felt very early on that I had to get my shit together. I had to like find something that I could do that no one could take from me that would give me meaning because I didn't and give me um, uh, self-esteem because I wasn't getting it from that particular part of my childhood environment, which wasn't anyone's fault. It was just a dynamic that was happening.
Yeah.
So I got very serious about I was serious as a kid. I was seriously interested in music from 9 years old, it's certainly. And and then when I got to high school, if I got into doing pole vaulting early. I was seriously interested in pole vaulting. It wasn't that great, but I was I learned everything about it. You know, whatever I did seriously. And I think it was because of this reason. It was like I was both interested and engaged in it, which was really good. I learned a lot about music and pole vaulting early on, but it was also because there was a kind of like I have to find something for myself. So the music thing happened early, and I got serious about composing about halfway through high school, and because I kept developing musically, I was taking piano classical lessons, but I was listening to jazz all the time. I was listening to both classical and jazz, and any modern music, like what I called modern music then, I could find. So I would say, well, certainly when I was a junior, I thought I want to be a composer, you know. And of course, in my family, since my dad was a painter, no one was going to go, "Are you out of your you out of your mind?" My dad might have said that as I said, "I want to be a lawyer." He'd go, "Oh no, what have I done?" Right? That's the kind of household I came. Is everything was just the reverse, upside down from the normal culture. And anyway, so that was kind of a gift. No one tried to stop me. No one tried to talk me out of it. Um, I think one
But
day
John, let me just ask you really quick. You mean your dad made a living being a painter? He was a fine artist?
he taught. Yeah, he taught it.
Oh, and he taught
He
too.
taught,
But
but he also was a successful artist. And yeah,
right,
so
but he didn't, just to make it clear, he didn't go, "Don't be an artist, John, because you won't make any money." He said, "Yeah, pursue your music. I'm not discouraging you because it's the hard way to make a living."
I don't think he ever said one way or the other, but I knew that he would be okay with it. I mean, I
Yeah,
just knew
that's
that he
good.
would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is
So,
rare because most parents are like, "Dude, you gotta have a job. You have to
yeah,
have
yeah, absolutely.
the classic line, you have to have something to fall back on."
That's right. Yeah. No one said that to me. I mean, I always thought, well, I knew I wasn't going to make a living on my music. I could tell
Yeah,
that at an early age, so I thought, well, I'd probably teach. I didn't really know. I didn't answer that question.
yeah.
But the only, so getting out of childhood, once I got to, there's a one little other story about this. I went to the San Francisco Conservatory of Music in 1968 to study composition. And it wasn't because the conservatory was the perfect place. It was just, I, it just seemed like I'll go somewhere not that far away, and see what's happening. And then I could always change, you know, to go through 4 years there. So I did have sort of a crisis initially that was sort of brought on by loneliness, because I was just by myself and I'd never experienced that. I mean, that's kind of like a common, I guess, going to college. But I lived in a place that was close to anybody. It wasn't like I was in a dorm. Um, so there was partly that, but partly like I had dreamt about being a composer in childhood, or certainly in high school. And I just thought, hey, it'll be great. I'll just, I'll get to, I'll just be in San Francisco. It'll be great. And it was like the reality of like, what the hell, what am I doing? What's this going to really be? Who am I going to, I remember thinking about my harmony teacher and thinking, I want to be like this guy. Like, I mean, he was okay, but back then I just thought, well, that's not the idea. I thought, what's the idea? Is it about having a certain job? Is it about creating a certain picture, like with a wife and kids and making money? Well, I knew that wasn't it. I mean, that might happen, but it wasn't the main thing. And anyway, for about 2 or 3 months, it was like I was in a kind of existential crisis. And then the answer came to me, which I to this day feel like I just lucked out. That the right answer for me came to me, which was just continue what you're doing. Continue this process of developing your musical imagination, which you've been doing since you were 9. I mean, I don't think that answer would have had any weight if I hadn't already been doing it, right? It was just, it's not about, the details of what I'm going to do for a job or what it's going to look like. It's that no matter what I do, I'm going to do this process that no one can take from me. No one can take from me. That was harkening back to this situation I described of, I got to find something that's mine. And then I didn't have any trouble with after that. I made mistakes and did lousy jobs and, I got married multiple times, but all of it is none of it. All of it's good, really, even if it was hard, because it was like it fit me, because I was all along the way, I was like doing my music and developing my musical imagination. I'd never stopped doing that. I never took a hiatus or anything. I always tried to do it. So it was just the answer for me, and it was luckily it came to me early, and I didn't have to go through years of searching for it.
It's sort of like you had an epiphany.
I had an epiphany. Absolutely. That's the right word for it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so then where are you finding, you're saying, you're playing piano. You said classical and jazz.
Yeah.
And you use the word improv. Your dad played jazz improv. That's really cool. But are you hearing like Cecil Taylor then? And then where are you hearing Ives? And then, where is it these guys sort of load into this? Oh, there's this other thing, computer. Where's the tipping point to hear computer music?
Yeah. So I went from being a huge Arnold Schoenberg fan, dissonant music fan, early 20th century, in high school, and I went, and then when I got to college, when I got to the conservatory, I kind of migrated from that and expanded off of that to like Cage and Feldman and Earl Brown and that kind of thing. I mean, I was listening to avant-garde jazz too, but I was doing sort of free improvisation on the piano with other students, but I wasn't that great a player. I mean, I kind of knew early on I'm more of a composer. I'm not so much a player. So all that's happening simultaneously, and it's after Cal Arts, when I went to graduate school at Mills, or it was when I was at Cal Arts, I think. The electronic music thing was, I heard, I'll tell you exactly what it was. It was a recording on released by Columbia Records of Cage's Variations 2 by David Tudor. Performed by David Tudor. Just like noisy as hell, amplified inside the piano and stuff. And it just knocked me out. I'd never heard anything like it. I thought, I didn't even know if I liked it. I just like went, Jesus Christ. It was the only thing even close to it was like hearing in high school, whole different genre, but hearing Purple Haze, hearing the sound of the guitar, I went, what is that?
Yeah.
I mean, whoever made that sound before, that was like, I don't know if you remember hearing that,
Oh,
but
dude, I gotta interject, John. I'm in Flint, Michigan, and we're in a carpool, and some lady's letting the AM radio play, and it's Purple Haze, and we're like, "What the fuck?" And then, years later, because Mike Kelly says I'm a noise musician, I looked it up in Wikipedia and it says noise musician, and then it lists who's it listed. And one of the names is Jimi Hendrix.
well,
And
of
I'm like,
course.
holy fuck, we didn't realize we were getting
Yeah.
that
Oh,
kind of
no
music.
question. That
That's an
sound is like,
amazing thing. Isn't that amazing?
yeah,
Yeah.
really to me, it was out of nowhere. I just thought,
Yeah.
Jesus, sound like 500-pound gorilla, like just the whole dimension of it was completely different. Well, I kind of felt that about the tutor, the
Yeah.
case
The
thing.
tutor piece. Yeah.
But anyway, um, and then it kind of dawned on me. I'd been not doing any electronic music, just a little bit. I took Sabatnik's class at Cal Arts and stuff,
Yeah.
but I thought, well, I had met Ashley, and I thought, I want to do electronic. That's it. That turned my head, and I thought, I'm going to go to graduate school, do electronic music. And Mills had just started this program with Ashley at his head, an MFA in electronic music the year before. So I went there in '71. I was in the second class of that degree program that focused on electronics. That's how I got.
Yeah.
That's directly how I got into it. It was like the tutor thing. I
Yeah.
say tutor, it was Cage, but tutor was the big driving force on that
Yeah. Well,
realization.
that was really concise, John. I appreciate your articulate and concise, because the next question is interesting. A screenwriting teacher told me great art is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick says the opposite. Great art is when you can clearly not see the intention.
Oh,
When you're playing, or when you're composing a piece of music, not a commission, a piece of John's music, you're
yeah.
composing your own music. What role does intention play in your creative process?
Oh man. I guess I'd answer it as there's a difference between the composer's intention and the listener's intention. And I certainly have intentions, but they're not very, they're almost impossible to articulate.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I have a lot of intentions, but they're hard to articulate. And I don't think that people are, when they listen to my music, are perceiving my intention. They're making up their own
Yeah.
way of getting into it. And I, yeah, that's a complex issue of like what's happening. I'm not like speaking directly to anyone. It's like it's like I'm speaking and they're making up their own story or something. It's more tangent than that. But intentions are important. I mean, I think I have to have intentions in order to keep doing what I'm doing. I don't know
But
how you,
see, what you're saying is really important to me, because you're saying, I must have intention, but I can't articulate it. That's beautiful,
yeah.
because you anticipate the next question in answering that one. Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. How much are you thinking of your audience, your listener, when you're composing your piece?
I'm not really thinking of them, but I have to have them. That's for darn sure.
Yeah.
If I wasn't, I mean, I have to perform, or if I didn't have the performance component where I got out there and
Yeah.
sort of tested the thing, uh, and what would be the word? Exposed it to the world
Yeah.
for good or evil. For good or bad, not evil, but just for good or bad. I have to have that, or I don't think I would. I don't think I would do it. I mean, I would try to do it, but I wouldn't. I have to have the scariness of that. I have to have
Yeah.
I have to be concerned and maybe even slightly worried about, is this going to be, when I'm getting ready for a performance, is going to be any good?
Yeah.
That drives me a lot. Fear of failure, it's kind of negative way to put it, but it sort of drives me a lot to try to make it the best I can, because I'm going to have to get up there and do it. Now, if I didn't have that, it would lose something important. It would lose its edge. I need that sort of knife hanging over
Yeah.
my throat.
It's
I
amazing.
guess.
So, John, what is the function of music?
Oh, God. Uh,
Yeah, you answered it. You know what Cage said? My guru or my Eastern philosophy teacher said, the function of music is to soothe the soul and make it susceptible for divine
yeah,
intervention.
that's a pretty good answer.
Literally, you went, "Oh God."
I'll go with that one. No, that's as good as that's about as good as you can get, you know. I think that's right, you know.
Yeah, and so um, Copeland says the four elements of music are, and this is funny because I'm always asking all the musician people this: melody, harmony, rhythm, and tone color. So we know what melody, harmony, and rhythm is, but in non-academic terms, what's tone color? To the normal person, if you're going to own, what is tone color? What would you say?
Usually I give an analogy. It's like the difference between a violin and a trumpet.
Yeah,
Or it's the it, it's yeah, it's the color. Well, he's then he just used the word color again. It's the texture of the
yeah.
sound. The sort of God, it's all yeah, it's hard to
Well, texture of the sound is good. Okay. Now, how do you, especially being someone who plays with sounds that aren't always like, well, that's a trumpet or that's a
right.
violin. You're playing with sounds that people are like, what is that? That sounds like a cat, or or
Yeah,
a
right.
broken. I like uh, the guy said Namjoon Pike's studio looked like a TV repair guy 5 years behind schedule.
Yeah, that sounds right. I
And
like
that's
that idea.
like your music is like a radio repair shop 5 years behind schedule.
I want my music to sound like
I
that's
know I said that, but here's how do you incorporate focus or just balance melody, harmony, rhythm, and tone color? How do they play a role in your compositions?
I think they do play a role, but they're so intertwined with the synthesis of the sound itself that it's hard to separate them.
Yeah.
You know, like in the Copeland case, I'm sure you know you could when you're writing music on paper, you're or writing notes on paper. You usually can think of them in those categories, but when you're making electronic sound, it's things tones are changing into noise, and you know pitches are changing into rhythms. You know, there's so much cross interpenetration or you know between all those elements constantly that they're not so distinct. So I don't think you know I do think of them. I might think of a pitch set that defines you know some primary element of a starting pitch for sounds or and there might be sometimes a clear rhythmic impetus that happens from outside the computer, but it usually once the music gets going it's not easy to separate all that stuff out. So I don't know if that answers your question.
No, that answer fine, John. My friend says the three T's of music are technique, theory, and taste. So technique, you've learned how to do this. Theory, you know the structure. How does one acquire taste?
By in music by listening and listening and listening and listening and
Yeah.
working making and listening. I like when I work, I mean like I was describing listening to music for hours and hours and hours, you know, all the time. And with my own music, I tell this to my student. I advise my students to do this. You know, if you're working on a piece, build like in electronics, build some little structure. I mean, there's different ways to do it, but build something. Try to play it as if it's a finished musical instrument, even though it isn't. Record yourself playing it, and then sit back and listen to the recording and write what you like about it and what you need to change. And then
Right.
do that again and just do that over and over and over. That it's kind of like you know, I think I've thought more recently that not too different from the way my dad painted abstractly. I think he would go up to the canvas and put something on there and try to get even he would say try to get some kind of dynamic or conversation going with the elements and then step back and look at it and then go add something. It's this kind of provisional process that's repeated and repeated.
I like that, listening and making, man. That's wise advice for me right now. Because here's the follow-up. McLuhan said, song is slowed down speech. The reason cultures have different musical taste is ultimately connected to language difference.
Interesting. Yeah, maybe. I don't know
Yeah.
if that's true. That's a good point. There's so many. I mean, that you might be able to analyze that if you could pin down cultures
Yeah.
more, or like if you look at it, of course, if you studied, musical culture like Indian classical music that's been around for thousands of years, developed for thousands of years, and you could try to track down how that's true.
Yeah.
But I don't know how you do that in our current culture. I mean, there's so many different musics. Anyway, it's an interesting thought. I'm not saying it's not true, but
What's more fundamental, John, music or language?
probably language.
Yeah. Tell me name of an instrumental that makes you laugh.
It makes me laugh.
Yeah.
But not. I mean, laugh like like it's a comedy routine, or
Well, I mean, just you know what the word laugh means. I mean, you would think, well, how could a song make you laugh unless there's lyrics involved? So there are songs that make people laugh where there's no lyrics or no singing, no
I mean, I
words.
laugh sometimes. I laugh sometimes hearing music like say jazz. I think I heard a Art Tatum record. There was a part on there that
Yeah.
just made me laugh out loud. It was so
Oh, that's
joyous.
good.
But yeah, when does that happen? And I don't even know why it's happening. It's
Well,
just
no, that's a perfect example because the answer I get the most, and I say it, is an instrumental that makes me laugh is like Thelonious Monk.
yeah.
You know, it's like da 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 da
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, right. Well, that's right. He's full of that stuff, right?
But that's funny. You said okay. So in talking about Monk, it's funny because my friend has this great thing. He says Thelonious Monk heard all the notes Charlie Parker heard, but only decided to play some of them.
That's good. Yeah, that's pretty clever. Yeah, I like that.
So
Yeah.
that's what I'm asking about is that space. He says silence is the loudest sound in the universe, and Miles talked about that, the space between
Yeah.
notes.
Right.
Even George Clinton says funk is the absence of. How do you know when to not play and have silence? How's that aesthetic form? Because I mean, basically, you're like, okay, play, play, play. Even in fact, one of your reviewers brought up Paganini, and
Oh yeah.
and it
Right.
was like that's so cool because Paganini's like, dude, could you slow down? There's too many notes there, but he did it so beautifully. How do you know how to incorporate silence?
Well, I've always incorporated silence, so it just seems as natural to me as how I incorporate sound. Yeah, I don't, you know, that doesn't seem like a difficult question to me.
Yeah.
But I'm not that, if I was more of a player, maybe it would be a harder question. I don't know. Not sure about that one.
Well, Leonard Cohen says the only way you can sell a concert is you put yourself at risk. And if you don't do that, people know. So, what
Yeah.
role does risk play in your creative process?
Well, I think I kind of referred to that with like doing the performance is always a risk. It's
Yeah.
always a risk because you
Yeah.
don't know what's going to happen. I mean, when the stuff I play, it never is exactly the same. I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's that's really important. The role it plays is really important in making it a lively thing and making it an interesting thing that I care about, that I work on and work on and work on. And I think without that, I've done, there's a couple of times in over my 50 years of working that I made some pieces that were compositionally were pretty strong, but they were safer, and I just lost interest in them. I couldn't
Wow.
do it, I just didn't care. It
Yeah.
had to be kind of dangerous or I wouldn't care about it. And
Wow.
that's not, everybody's different. I don't mean that's
Yeah.
a prescription for everybody, but for me, it's important.
Well, a jazz writer music writer Ben Ratliff says, I mean sound as it has long functioned among jazz players, as a mystical term of art, as in every musician finally needs a sound, a full and sensible embodiment of their artistic personality, such that it can be heard at best in a single note. So me and you could hear like Miles and go, oh, that's Miles,
Yeah.
notes. So he puts it into 2 words. Ben says Miles is fragile and pointed. Coltrane is slightly undercooked and urgent. If a music writer was going to describe John's sound in 2 words, which 2 words would you go, hey, he kind of got it? That writer got me.
Well, what comes to mind is charm and awkwardness.
Oh, I like that. Charm and awkwardness. That's really, really honest and good. So here's some LA Free Press in 1969 asked Frank Zappa about Pauline Oliveros. Her work with sound above the audible and below, creating a mass. And they said, Frank, you like that idea. And this is Frank saying, not that it created a mass, it created something audible. It produced a sum indifference tone, which happened to be located within the audible frequency range.
That's
By,
right.
by combining something so high you couldn't hear it and something so low you couldn't hear it, it yields something in the middle you could hear. Whether or not you liked what you heard in the middle is another question. The concept is brilliant.
Yeah.
So can you suss that out? What is going on there? The sum indifference tone located within the audible frequency range, so high and so low that you hear in the middle.
Well, difference tones are you just subtract one frequency from the other, and if the vibrational result, if that resulting number is in the range of human hearing, then you will be able to hear it, which is
Yeah.
nominally 20 to 20,000 cycles. So
Yeah.
yep, that's that's just the physics of it. So yeah,
Yeah.
whether it is a brilliant idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Pauline's a brilliant composer. I mean, he, from all angles, from electronics to, her meditation pieces, but also when she wrote instrumental pieces. If you ever listen to those pieces, they're fantastic. So
Yeah.
she was, you know, totally right on all that stuff.
Amazing. I got to tell her about Frank mentioning her when she was playing in a parking structure her accordion for some music festival.
When was that? Like years
In
ago, or not that
Santa
long?
Monica, maybe 15
Yeah,
years
sounds
ago.
like Pauline. Yeah,
Yeah, it was great. A parking structure because of the sound.
yeah, would sound good. Yeah, wow.
So John McLuhan says everything we invent extends some humanness. So like knife and fork extends our teeth, shutter and a camera extends our eyelid. Maybe even non-tangible, say religion or philosophy extends consciousness. What does the computer extend for you? What humanness?
Partly would be the invention of structure, imaginative structure. There's
Yeah,
so many possibilities. That's appealing to me. Any idea you think up, you could try to do. Any relationship between ideas you can think up, you can
yeah,
try to implement with a computer. That was what that was the thing that was apparent right away. I mean, I think it's probably common with anyone that learns to program at any level, really. That maybe when you're starting and you don't know a language yet, you're thinking you're learning these codes, these commands, and you're going, how do you get from how does this get me where I want to go? But then once you get a kind of handle on those commands and and maybe for me it was like maybe 3 months, I kind of got the hang of it, and I knew enough commands to create something that did something, even if it was very minimal. And I realized, Jesus, yeah, this is amazing. Yeah, it was just total empowerment. It was like
yeah,
I could just see even then, even though I was just starting, that pretty much any idea I could think of, I could try to do.
yeah,
Now, course, there's questions about, well, is this language ultimately the best language to use for doing that idea? Or there's all sorts of other refinements, but the basic perception that that was true, that you could use the computer and coding to create almost anything you could think of, was very appealing to me. That definitely appealed to me. And that's
Amazing.
partly what you're saying, I think.
Yeah.
Now I can't remember your question, but
No, it's what does the computer extend? What humanness?
yeah. So that mean pretty much you can create anything, meaning, and musically it'd be like, often would be like, yeah, that any kind of any notion about interactions of musical ideas in time,
Yeah.
I could try to create in a computer language that ran and would become music with
What do
other
you
input stuff. But
Yeah,
anyway,
what do you that was good, John. What do you think the motive of the cave artist was? We have record of that, or the cave music, or the
that,
cave dance. What do
that's
you think
fascinating question.
your guess or hunch? What do you think their motive was?
You know, those people were smart. So I mean, I think part of it was play.
Yeah,
Part of it was a kind of externalizing their imagination so that they could see it and ponder it. I guess those are two answers.
yeah. What's
Uh,
more important, conviction or compromise?
Conviction.
You've accomplished a lot. How do you rate these three elements, luck, skill, and ambition? What played the biggest role, second and third, in your accomplishments?
Oh God. I mean, rank them in order, the most important to the least important. Well, I would say, God, I don't really like the word ambition, but I would say ambition, luck, and skill.
Wow. T.S. Eliot said, poetry's outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in?
Sound.
Yeah. Yeah. Two of my film heroes' mantra is ignore yourself. There's no self expression. In fact, Cecil Taylor says, I'm just a vehicle and this stuff just comes through me. Is art making, music making, more self expression or more your vehicle for whatever technologies, cultures, and environments are dominant?
What was the first? The first one
Is,
was
is art
self-expression.
Yeah, is art making more self-expression or more your vehicle?
I think it's more self-expression.
Yeah. Can art making be egoless?
I don't know about that. I mean, I think yes, in the at its highest levels, it's ego is not the main thing, but I think ego is always there. I don't believe Cage. I mean, Cage has an ego like everybody else. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of John Cage, but I don't really believe his total rap. I mean, his rap is very interesting, and there's a lot of great things in it, but I don't
yeah,
believe it's an accurate representation of what he did exactly,
yeah,
necessarily in every case.
yeah.
So
I've talked to people about that. It's like in our day and age, you have to, when you're an artist, you have to be able to talk about your art. No, you shouldn't. You should no, actually you brought up Stan Brakhage. Stan Brakhage would say, let the film speak for itself. Then he would talk for 2 hours.
yeah. You ever meet Stan Brakhage?
I haven't met him. No.
Is he still alive?
No, he's dead.
No,
Yeah.
he's dead. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, it's that thing, people, why do you have to be articulate about your art? Because you got to talk to the press, or you got to do stupid podcasts or whatever.
It's a big help for your career. I'll tell you that.
Yeah,
If
it's a
you're good
big
at it.
help for your career. But
Yeah.
again, I mean, there are some artists who go, nope, like Terrence Malick, nope, I'm not talking, you know,
Yeah. Right.
but whatever. So
Yeah.
tell me one major element of your creativeness, John, that's changed, and one major element that's stayed the same in the many years you've been doing it.
Well, I would say that the thing that has stayed the same is my is to some extent my musical sensibility.
Yeah.
But the thing that's changed, um, it's really hard to say what's changed. I don't know if I have a good handle on that.
Okay, well, here's the follow-up actually is Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. Says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength rather than we're normally taught to overcome a weakness. Tell me,
I agree with them.
tell
I
me
think
a weak, yeah, tell me a weakness you turned into a strength.
well, I mean, I, I think my limitations as a player,
Yeah,
the reasons I didn't decide to follow up on becoming like a traditional musician of any kind, or a
yeah,
jazz musician, um, was because I could tell. I didn't like practicing that much, and I wasn't that instantly naturally good at playing anyway. But that didn't mean I still didn't work really hard on
yeah,
learning and playing and understanding traditional notated music. But so I think that's kind of a weakness that I turned to advantage by directing myself to be a composer, um, doing electronic music, which can be to some extent automated, so I don't have to play all the time. But when I do play, when I do interact physically, um, I found I think because of my playing limitations, in a way, I've found a way to interact with the music that's very unique to me that ends up being a kind of strength. It's kind of like that awkward comment I made. It's
yeah,
like there's a certain kind of slight awkwardness that I like. And, you know, I mean, you think of all the even great players like Monk who are fabulous. Technically, they're fabulous, but he's got a definite personality.
yeah,
Certain and some people would say, yeah, limitation. Well, it could be limitation, but it's like he's made it in this thing that's so great, you would never want to cure him of his limitation, right? I mean,
uh,
anyway. So I kind of think of it that way for myself. That it's ended up being because I've pushed and pushed and pushed and trying to make something that doesn't solve or overcome that. It just recasts it into this positive quality.
yeah. That's like I interviewed this person. They says I'm a neurodivergent artist, and they use these words like spectrum. And it's like, yeah, it reminded me of McLuhan's great line. You can't prove you're sane unless you got discharge papers from a mental hospital.
That's
Like
pretty good.
Monk and Sunra are shamans. I mean, but they might go, they're fucking nuts, man. And it's like, no, that's all right. Whatever, man. I'm not gonna
Yeah,
label people.
yeah,
That's another, but
yeah.
this is sort of goes along. There's a line that goes, you create what you resist. Bob Goldthwait said, you are what you hate. James Joyce said, it's a curious thing how your mind is super saturated with the religion in which you say you disbelieve. And Louis Buñuel nailed it. He said, thank God I'm an atheist. So I'm not saying
That's a
you,
great. I
right,
never heard that.
but this is like your reactions to this line. You create what you resist. It's not you, but one creates what one resists. Any thoughts on that line?
Well, I think you're always pushing on something that has a lot of resist. You're pushing on things that have resistance.
Yeah,
Uh, Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that.
yeah,
And I mean, maybe those things interest you because they're pushing back. If it just if it just gave way and yeah, then it wouldn't really work as well. So I kind of agree with that analogy
it's
or
good.
that
It's like
view of it.
another great McLuhan line is, if it works, it's obsolete.
Yeah, yeah.
I had one when I was a kid. If it works, break it the American way.
That is the American way.
Okay, these are 5 quick Alan Watts questions off the top of your head in just a couple words. 1, who started it all?
I have no idea.
2, are we going to make it?
Jesus, I hope so. These are
3,
not
where
these are not original answers, I'd have to say. Though.
that's all right, man. This is fine. 3, where do we put it?
Where do we put it? Where do we put what?
There you go. You answered a question with the question, you win. That's what this series is all about. Number 4, who's cleaning it up?
Oh God, that's yeah. We are.
5, is it serious?
It's very serious. Yeah.
All right. Couple more and we're out of here, John. This has
Yeah.
really been fun. I really appreciate your time here. Thank you so
It's
much.
been really fun, Jerry. I appreciate your. It's been really fun to talk to you.
Okay, here it is. How do you find peace of mind?
I write in my journal.
Nice. Is perception reality?
No, I don't think so. Necessary. Well, God, not always. Put it that way.
Yeah. If you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
Keep going. You're okay.
Yeah. Which way should toilet paper come off the roll, over or under?
Over. I think that's changed over the year. I think it used to be under because I think it must be what I inherited from my upbringing. But
Well, 95% people say over. The patent is 100 years old. It hasn't gone over. But the 5% who say under, they have their reasons.
yeah, that's pretty good. Thank you.
If a publisher was going to release your autobiography off the top of your head, what would the title be?
Oh God, this guy's totally nuts.
That's a good. Okay, they want to scent the glue and the binding of your autobiography. What smell?
Oh God, let's just Jesus Christ. Oh, I'll just say jasmine flowers or something.
Cool. If a statue is built in your honor, where would you want it displayed and what would it be made of?
Hmm. Wow. Well, I wanted it to be made of something permanent, like metal or steel, but and where would I want it? Maybe up on the ridge of the Berkeley Hills here near where my dear friend Jim Horton, who passed away in the 90s, uh, he had us put his ashes up there. And I don't know, Jim was just such a wonderful person and so important to me musically that I guess if I have to have a statue, maybe I put it near where his ashes were.
Good. Yeah, my wife lived near the Rose Garden and the tennis courts there,
Oh
and,
yeah, that's a
and I
beautiful spot.
love that area. Love
Yeah,
it. Okay, tell me something good you never had and you never want,
I've never had and I never want.
and it's good.
Uh, Boy, that's a tough one. Well, world travel. I'm not a big traveler.
Good. I'm that way too. At this point, I won't even travel in the States, but I was like, why travel in other countries? I haven't even seen enough of America yet. But
Yeah,
now with air travel, it's like, oh my God.
yeah.
Okay, a couple more. If you were in a vat of vomit up to your neck and someone threw a bag of shit at your face, what would you do?
Jeez. Uh, God, I try to wipe as much of the shit off and get out of the vat.
Very good. What's the cultural shift you see developing today that inspires you?
Mm, well, cultural shift. I'm inspired by work that young composers are doing.
Yeah,
That's yeah, and I don't know if that is a cultural shift, but it feels certainly different than what I'm doing.
good. John, what's a question that remains unresolved for you?
Oh my God. I mean, there's a lot that remains unresolved. Uh, where are we going? What are we doing? You know, just feeling my way.
Yeah.
There's many unresolved questions.
Well, both of those are good. Where are we going and what are we doing? That's good.
Yeah.
Okay. How has composing and playing electronic computer music shaped your behavior?
Well, I just think in terms of practice, the way that how I outlined, making sound, recording it, and listening to it, and then making more sound. That's a behavior that's
Yeah,
just a constant for me. So that's yeah, having being able to make sounds instantly of all different kinds and being able to record them, which of course depends on all this technology, is and then so then I can listen right back immediately. So there's no delay. I'm not writing a score that I'm trying to
yeah.
imagine what it's going to sound like. It's those electronic music creating behaviors, I think.
It's amazing because it's Chris Marker again. He says, "How can we escape time?" And it's almost like you escape time because your playback is immediate. And
Right.
the key I've learned from talking to you, John, is the word listening. Because I said, blah blah blah, and you said listening, listening, listening. You said it almost like a loop because people don't realize you've got
Right.
to invest the time in listening.
I think you do. I think
Yeah,
that's the only way forward, really. Yeah, I
yeah.
do.
Okay, two more when we're out of here, John. This is Thornton Wilder in 1928. Art is confession, art is the secret told, but art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time. You've laid your cards on the table for 90 minutes. I'm not insinuating you haven't already answered this. What's it really all about for you?
It yeah, it's cre- creating a sonic a sonic episode that has independence for me and um, fascination for me and unpredictability and but uh, it sounds like me too. I guess all those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like sort of like almost getting out of the way, but you have to be in the way too.
Oh
You can't.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think so.
That's what a lot of these musicians I talk to, I goes, yeah, it's like Don Preston said, it's like, yeah, don't think. It's like, give me a break. What do you mean, don't think? You got to think a little, but they go, oh no, you got to get in the flow. But I mean, it sounds new agey, but that's sort of it. You sort of said that. What
Yeah.
you just said, sort of, because back to the can art making be egoless? Most people go, no. And then a woman about a year ago goes, art, may good art is egoless. And then another woman said, great art has to be egoless. So it was sort of like you saying, you make the sonic episode and then you stand out of the way of it.
Yeah.
But
Right.
at the same time, you've created it. But
Right.
you're sort of like letting it, actually it's this Condero quote that I didn't bring up, but I was going to bring it up. And he basically says in Milan Kundera in The Unbearable Likeness of Being, he says, this is why I love writing, because the character that I'm writing about can go further than I can. I said,
Yeah.
dude, yeah, you take a pen and you write a character on the paper. How can that character go further than you can? you
Right.
know, it
Right.
sounds like mystical or poetic or romantic, but it's sort of like, isn't that what you just sort of described to me?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I think it has the power to do that, and you're not controlling it after that, really. It's just
Yeah.
kinda have some kinda life of its own now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What gives you the most optimism?
Oh, when I if I go to a concert and I'm just knocked out by it, I don't care who's doing the music.
Yeah,
It's yeah, that then I'm the most optimistic.
yeah. It's really good because the first question I asked John was, "What's the best thing for a human being?" Wilhelm Reich said, "The best thing for a human being is another human being." They
Wow.
asked Groucho Marx the last question, "What gives you the most optimism at the end of his life?" And he said, "Other people." So it's
Wow.
sure been fun spending this time with another person, especially because it was you. John, thank you so much for your time and energy.
Thank you, Jerry. It was really fun. Really enjoyed talking to you and getting your all your questions and thoughts from all these different sources and your own thoughts too.
Yeah, really cool. And even though I'm going to hit the end broadcast button, I hope this never ends and we can keep talking forever and ever. Kind of like one of those loops in experimental music.
Sounds right.
Zappa used to call it looperama music.
There you go. There you go.
Okay,
Okay.
John, thanks.
Take care.